What if the answers you've been searching for were already within you? So, welcome back to Voices of Impact, the space where we explore the conversations that help us lead ourselves and our lives with greater awareness, alignment, and authenticity. Today's conversation invites us a little bit inward. So, because in a world that constantly tells us to seek answers externally, what happens when we begin trusting our own intuition, exploring the parts of ourselves we've been hiding, and embracing the healing that comes from truly knowing who we are? So, all of us are going through it or been through this. So, I'm excited to welcome Jen Sankey to the show. She's an author, tarot creator, speaker, professional witch, and intuitive guide who helps people reconnect with their wisdom and magical potential. So, through tarot, lunar wisdom, and shadow work, she creates transformation tools that help people navigate uncertainty, deepen self awareness, and trust themselves more fully. So, she's the creator of the award winning Stardust Wanderer Tarot and author of Manifesting with the Moon, a lunar guide to magic, inspiring people around the world to explore intuition as a pathway to healing, clarity, and personal empowerment. So, I've been through it with myself, so I know it's actually very helpful. So, what makes this conversation especially aligned is what we both believe in is that healing requires courage, honesty, and self-awareness first. Shadow work reveals the part of ourselves that are ready for integration. And the more we know ourselves, and the more we heal, the more powerfully we can truly lead from an authentic place. So, in this episode, we'll explore how all of this, especially self discovery, can become catalysts for creating a life that feels more aligned, authentic, and fulfilling. So, not just life, but your career, whether you're in corporate or you're in entrepreneurship. So, Jen, welcome to Voices of Impact.
Thanks for having me.
Amazing. So, let's go into your journeys. When you go look back at your journey, what first awakened your connection to this side of the aspect, right? Which is intuition, energy, and the mystical world.
He's always kind of the weird little kid running around in the woods looking for fairies and making potions and all of that. But really, I think too, when I was 14, I was on my own. So it was kind of that fork in the road, like either we're going to go this way or we're going to go that way. So I chose to lean into my intuition, lean into my magic instead, just because that was always something that was very interesting to me and I really connected with. And it was always there. So that's really kind of what I went with.
Amazing. Amazing. I love that. And then you talked about at 14 as well that you started tarot, but you also used your babysitting money or something like that. And what did
Mhm.
that moment represent for you at that time?
I guess that was just kind of the gateway to all the things. I had finally, been able to get to a store where I was able to buy my first set of tarot cards, and that's what I did. And really, at that moment, it was when I was deciding to find answers for myself because, the prior 14 years relying on other people really didn't help me out too much. So it was really time to rely on myself. And I kind of felt like I had the tools to do that. Like I had this tool, didn't really know how to use it just yet, didn't really fully understand it for a couple years, but it just kind of gave me that, I guess, power in a sense that, okay, I can figure this out on my own.
Yeah, amazing. That's very interesting because I'm the exact opposite. I'm just learning tarot right now and all of that. And I'm just like, this is pretty cool. Like I wish I known this in the childhood days, right? So
Yeah.
your journey is very interesting. I love how you're sharing all of that, which is amazing. And I can relate to relying on others. I've been there. It just did not work because I was very a logical person, masculine energy, and that's how I was raised. But now I also started to follow my intuition. And like I said, I wish someone knew this before. I wish I met you before. Right. Or else I would have saved a lot of this burnout for myself. But I'm glad that you knew it, even at 14, which is amazing. So, how did your early experiences? I know you talked about your childhood, but how did it shape your belief in intuition as something that's practical, though? So, you use it as a tool in your practical life and shaped your reality rather than abstract or out there, because I know some people have talked about it and they think it's woo woo. And I mean, some people understand, some people don't. But when did you kind of get that time or moment when you finally figured it out? It was a more practical thing that you could be used on an everyday basis.
Me, I didn't really have that space to play around with it in that woo woo sense, like you said. I was on my own and that was it. So I kind of hit the ground running with the practical. And that's something that I've carried throughout my whole practice, even now, even with my book and all of that. It's all practical things. It's very much like, this is how you do it. This is when you do it. You can use this stuff every day to kind of move you along. And I think for me, it was just kind of, that's kind of the scope that I used it in pretty, right away. And then it's almost like the other part of it came later when I was in a more safe, comfortable space that I was able to lean into the more of the spiritual, the more of, the expansion of that and learning more about that. But, for me at the beginning, it was really just, I needed it to get by. I needed it to, like, how can I use this every day to help me? And that's now what I teach others too, because like you said, people usually start the opposite of that. And they're like, okay, I'm going to meditate for an hour. What's going to happen? I'm going to be, enlightened and everything's going to fall into my lap, and that's where I'm like, okay, no, that's not really what's
Yeah.
going to happen. We got to take some action steps. We need to kind of move our bodies. We need to see how it feels in our body and be able to utilize that the best way possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that because, yeah, I've actually worked with a lot of intuitive coaches, and they were like, first do meditation and then get to the practical. And coming from a very corporate background into the spiritual space, that's what I did. I was very practical first and then did that. So it didn't make sense to me. But then
Mhm.
I love how you talked about that you teach it a different way, that you used it practically and then you got into the spiritual. And I know that you're creating the decks like Stardust Wanderer Tarot and you started the book. So love to have you share more about that and what inspired you to like start the book. Can you share a little bit more of how you specifically use it, like practical ways every single day, maybe like in your business?
So I started actually, my first creation was my Stardust Tarot, Wanderer Tarot deck. I self published that. I did a Kickstarter, successful, all of that. That is definitely not for the weak. It is a lot harder than people think it is. And I, for that, it was, I worked with tarot. I worked with all these different modalities that I have. One day, honestly, the Fool is the first card in the tarot deck, and she in my deck, her name is Mina. She just kind of appeared with this whole story, like, "Hey, here we are. We're making a deck," and I
Mhm.
kind of, hesitated. I was like, "What do you mean?" Like, I'm thinking to myself, How, "Can I do this? Can I create 78 cards, this story that makes sense that people are going to be able to pick up and use?" And, it was quite the journey. It was quite the learning experience. So that was really kind of what started it all. Then I did my Enchanted Forest Felines tarot. That was with Llewellyn. So then I, at that point, crossed over into traditional publishing. And so I kind of got a little bit of each world and how I can incorporate what I learned self publishing into the traditional publishing world. And it's it's very different, and it's got its pluses and minuses, but I definitely prefer the traditional publishing. And then from there, we went. I started with my book and writing about the moon and how to work with the moon to manifest. Is something that I started using a million years ago when I'm doing client readings. And I knew, we know the moon is there, and no matter whether you work with it or not, it's there. So why not utilize that energy? And so as I was doing readings for people, and I'm a very like kind of more like a counseling type reader, and you always get homework when you get a reading with me. I'm
Yeah.
not kind of like, this is how it is. I'll see you later. Bye. Never talk to you again. Like, to me, it's a process where it's a collaboration. We're working to do something better for yourself. So, bringing in that moon energy was really working. And I tried out a couple different things, and I just came up with this kind of moon map for manifesting. And then I said, I think I could probably organize this enough to put it into a book. And again, that was a very big learning process. It was, I grew a lot while I was writing it. I learned a lot about myself, about just that process. And so that just kind of kept going. I have a couple other tarot decks that I'm working on, another book I'm working on, and it just kind of snowballed from there.
Amazing. I love that. So first of all, congrats on all of these. And I feel like
Thank
it just starts with one idea and you
Mhm.
don't know, the universe just brings us an idea and you don't know the how and the when and you follow whatever your intuition's saying, which is what the tarot reader did and the tarot decks. And then you started it and got into traditional publishing, which is great because I'm also an author. I understand how it's like to really publish a book. It's a learning curve, it's a learning process,
Yeah,
and in itself, right? So I haven't published an
yeah,
actual paperback, so I know that's a little harder, but I've done the ebook. So that was a whole entire, like, I thought I was going to finish like in a month or two, but it took like an year, 1 year to
yeah,
do it. So I totally understand you, girl, on how you did that.
yeah.
So
No,
kudos to you.
yeah, tarot deck takes about 3 years to create.
Yeah.
So, that takes a long time, and the book took probably about 2 years altogether after organizing it and citations and all of that, because when you traditional publish, you get all your citations and stuff, and then they go over them and double check all of them,
Yeah.
and, there's times where, like, you maybe you used a certain website and the website's not there anymore. So then you have to go back and almost redo that section because it probably was based around whatever quote you used or reference. So like it does, like you don't realize these little bits that kind of extend it and take a little longer. And those are like, that's like where a lot of the frustration is.
Right.
And that's when you gotta like really like dig your heels in and be like, I'm doing it. I gotta do this. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, yeah, I did mine, like, I think 4 or 5 years ago, and they were like, "Why
Mhm.
are you publishing book, Vina?" But I also shared my own story, and that's how it started with my business as well, and I
Yeah.
was like, "I need to put it out there. It's really my mission and my story, and you have a calling," right? I say my calling is really, like, the fact that you have the intuitive nudge that the universe gives you, so kudos to you, and I'm so happy for you. And also with the moon lunar, I'm new to this. So I would love to learn more about it because I'm actually Indian, I'm Hindu, and they always talk about the goddesses and the moon and all that. And I
Right.
haven't been too much in the spiritual space until recently. And I'm like, this is really true in a sense that, your natural rhythms and cycles really affect your decision making. So, for someone who, for example, is an entrepreneur and they want to make a decision about what clients to, work with and all of that, or, scale a business or something like that, how can people use something like, the moon phases in a more grounded, practical way? And how does that support the decision making?
I mean, firstly, if you get my book, it lays it all out for you. It literally tells you exactly what to do. But I think really the first thing to do is when you're first super new to working with the moon and figuring it all out is go through a moon cycle every day, write down how you feel. Write, get a moon app, write down what phase it is, write down how you feel every single day. It doesn't need to be long. It could be one word and go through a whole cycle. So that 30 days or so and really just deciding and figuring out how the moon affects you because it's different for everybody. So some people on the full moon are super energized. Some people on the full moon are super sleepy. And once you kind of have an idea of your own rhythm in sync with the moon, then you can plan around it. So you know that you're not going to the full moon makes you sleepy and in my book it's really about balance, then you know that maybe that's a self-care day. Maybe then you aren't going to be doing some super big act whereas maybe after the full moon we start going into the waning phases. So the waning is what after the full moon. So that's when the moon is starting to kind of disappear in the sky. And so maybe for some reason that last quarter moon you are super energized where someone else isn't. So you know what, maybe I'm not going to do it on the full moon, but that last quarter moon, I'm ready to go. Plan that big action for then. So maybe that's when if you have clients that you're working with, that's really when you sit down with maybe just their names or their profiles or however you do it and really sit in your intuition and see if those people are a good fit for you. Whereas if you do it that full moon and if you're a sleepy full moon person, you're not going to be fully into it. You're not going to be your intuition may not really be spot on at that point and you may not make the best decision for you. So that's really something that I think right out of the gate is really important to do.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, this is like new for me, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people who are listening that, like, sometimes we go into our logic and we just plan it out weekly, but we don't know our rhythms at all. And I
Mhm.
started to go into human design because I know someone was like, "Hey, what's your human design mean?" And it's like, I'm a projector. And she's like, energetically, it's going to be different. Build your business around that. And then I had a couple of people who also explained the moon thing. And I was like, that's really interesting. And I do talk about this with my family because there are times when I'm energized and then I'm just like, I need a break. I think it was yesterday itself. And I was like not understanding that. But whatever you're saying just makes sense. I think just building that awareness because as mentioned, a lot of us who are higher achievers are coming from that corporate consulting into this spiritual business coaching space, and we're still learning about it. So I love how you shared that there's also these kind of aspects that really affect our planning cycles and how we show up in business, right? So plan around that and how you make decisions. So anyone who's listening, please check out Jen's book. I'm probably going to check it out myself too, because I think this would be very helpful for me. So, like I
Lot of stuff
said,
in it. Yeah, a lot of stuff.
yeah, I'm learning from all of the guests as well, right? We're all learning from each other. So, thank
Right.
you. And going into energetics, I know some people, it's like a saying where working with the energy instead of against it. So, what does that mean in like daily life when people say that?
I think it really ties into even just what we were talking about, the energy of the moon and what's going on. And there definitely are times that, if you're running a business, you got stuff to do. You have decisions you need to make. But
Right.
being aware of how you're feeling and how you're feeling in your body, which is your energy, I think is really important. Because, if you have a deadline or you have a day, you really need to make a decision right then and there. Knowing exactly how you're feeling and how you're feeling in your body, and recognizing that and honoring that, it helps to kind of direct where you're going to go with things. Or maybe, even speaking up for yourself and saying, you know what, I'm not really feeling it today. I'm going to have to put this off another day. And standing in your power in that way and being able to be like, okay, well, I know you wanted this answer today, but I'm not ready that yet. I'm not ready yet. I'm not there yet. And recognizing that and giving that space. And sometimes, people just have to deal with it. They're going to have to wait a day. I mean, most times that's not going to change the world. I
Right.
mean, there's are obviously circumstances, but for the most part, a day isn't going to make that much of a difference. And I think that we're so used to the hustle culture. We're so used to the go, 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 do this, do this, do this, that we put all of that stuff aside because we were like, no, I can't think about how I'm feeling about squat right now because I have to make all these decisions and I have to get all this stuff moving. But in reality, you don't, and I think it's being able to take that step back and take that breath and be like, okay, wait, is this really what I want? Is this how I want it to go? Is this the person I want to work with? Is this, do I want to start this program today? Or next week, or is it something that maybe I might need an extra couple days for? And that's really where that energy comes in, and paying attention to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're spot on. It's really about, and I've done this many times, right? And I want to explain that is, yeah, to your point, we're going away from the hustle culture and we never take the time to feel into it. And to your point, you don't have to just, even if you don't feel it today, like you're tired or you're burnt out or whatever reason, and you're just like, today's not the day, listen to your body, right? Because we don't take the time to do that, even if it's like 20 minutes. If it's one day to like later to respond or even a launch, or anything, just take the time, slow down, right? And we're so focused on, like I said, I was like that too, the go getter. And now I've started to slow down and it's much easier to plan things around your energy. So I love how you said that. And it's very important because that was actually my next question. If anyone's emotionally flooded or overwhelmed, like the shadow work is important, right? So what's stopping you from like speaking up, right? So like literally looking at your own subconscious patterns and saying no to someone. If they really are your true supporters or your true friends, they will understand. And if they're not, like to your point, then you have to see that this is a misaligned conversation or a misaligned relationship and reorganize your relationships and see like what is more in alignment with who I'm becoming, right? And honor your cycle and your health first, right? So, absolutely. And it's very important to do that in your work and speak up. So, and this goes into my next question is support systems. I know that's in the shadow work, but what conditioning do you think prevents, especially women, from reaching out for support when they need it the most? Because I know you were talking about collaboration. This is a huge thing that I've seen, but there's a lot of conditioning and patterns. So, what do you think is actually the one that prevents people from doing that?
I think that when, just being female, it's hard because we're always taught to take care of everybody else first.
Yeah.
Make sure everybody else is sorted. And then we can deal with, kind of deal with ourselves. But by then we're usually exhausted. So we don't. So we don't practice that self care. We don't practice even just getting to know ourselves and understand ourselves. So I think that it's really important to recognize that when you're going into situations, or even if you are have a group that you're helping guide other people, making sure not to give everything. A full cup can't help, an empty cup can't help you, right? Like if you empty that cup, you're not helping anybody. You'll maybe help that group, but when you go to the next group, you're gonna be burnt out and just done at that point. And I think that unfortunately a lot of women are very competitive instead of collaborative, and trying to be graceful in that and recognizing that. And if you see somebody that, or you tend to work with, or you're working with somebody, like you're in it, it's to the point where you can't just like leave the situation. You're like, okay, I got to stick through this. Understanding that maybe there's a lack of something in their lives. Maybe they are missing something, and being graceful and trying to be a little bit more compassionate instead of just leading with anger or leading with annoyance or leading with something, of that nature. And then, asking questions, oh, that's another thing that we don't do as women either,
Yeah.
is ask questions. We just kind of deal with it, or
Mhm.
we don't say no, or we don't anything, and even saying no. Sometimes we'll say no to somebody and they'll be like, what do you mean? Why? And well, I said no, and that's my answer, and that's it. Sometimes you giving the answer as to why you're saying no is a kind of a shadowy aspect, and it actually might help you. So if it's in, if you are able to, in a calm, respectful manner, say, I'm saying no because XYZ, you're actually helping yourself by doing that. You're not even, and I think that's a perspective that needs to change because, I don't owe that person an explanation. I don't owe them anything. I said no and that whole thing. But sometimes by explaining it to that person, you're kind of healing something in yourself. And
Right.
I think that's something that's missed very, very often. And by being able to recognize that and pay attention to it, and give it that space, again, it's giving yourself that emotional space, and giving, again, also that grace to other people, that when you see them coming at you in a certain way, wait a minute, they may have something that's triggering them, and something's going on, and maybe that can even be a learning experience for the both of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And really good points here because from my own experience, a lot of times it kind of prevented me from asking for help or support because I was raised with people or women who are very competitive or were collaboration. And when you're kind of used to that pattern and it was very transactional, and I loved how you said, don't give everything because I'm the kind of person who likes to just go all in. And as women, we're like very emotional and empathetic. And that's a huge lesson that I've learned is setting the boundaries correctly. And it's okay to give, but don't give like too much, right? Know who's actually like a true supporter, like going back to that, and true collaborator, and looking at what's aligned, but feeling into it, which wasn't the mistake that I made, right? I just went ahead and it was great on paper, but I didn't feel into it. I currently do like so many collaborations right now. And all the collaborators, I had to get on a call and really understand, how do I feel after this conversation? Am I feeling expansive? Are they truly collaborative, or is there like this ego or this competitive nature? I love what you said is it's not has anything to do with you, because sometimes people in the healing phase or are like in that shadow phase, they're not intentionally doing anything. It's just part of something that they need to work on. But we tend to take it like personally, like, oh my God, like she said no or something, but it's not an attack. It's just on their own. They might not have the energetic capacity, they just don't there's other things going on their plate. I had one person who, like, said that she was going through a divorce or her daughter was going through something, and you have to really truly connect with that person and hold that safe space for them to open up, and then, like, you I loved how you said asking questions, right? So that's one thing, and in order to ask for support, that was a struggle that a lot of high achieving women have. It's okay to collaborate, partnership. It's something I still see for the past couple of weeks. One partnership ended for me just because I valued collaborative efforts. I wanted to co create with her, and she was more in the season of, I just want to do things on my own, right? I'm in that independent phase, and that's okay. And she was telling me how she wasn't doing her healing currently, and she needed that space, right? So, and I was just like, to your point, giving some grace. So you have to understand that not everyone's going to be at the pace of where you are in the growth. And you will attract people who are going to value collaboration and they're true. And it's okay to even delegate if you need to, right? So it's very important to ask for help and not do things by yourself because then we will feel burnt out to leverage the partnerships, right? So the more you heal, the more you would be like, I value community, I value collaboration. And that's exactly where I am, right? So 6 months ago, I was that independent boss babe that didn't really want any help. And I had that pride. But the more I worked on my shadow work and healed, I value collaboration a lot. And I attract a lot of women. And it's a huge sisterhood that values the same. So I love how you talked about that and overcoming these blocks and fears and working on yourself and taking the time to do those integrations and energetic work, right, is very important. So and thank you for sharing that. And if one person listens to this episode, what do you hope they walk away feeling or believing different?
That it's okay to be on your own side, that you can still do all the things, but you can also be your biggest supporter. And to know that there's a lot of energy like the moon, and there's a lot of tools out there that you can use and utilize. You don't have to make it crazy and 3 hours long and all of that, but you can use them in a practical way that can really help you, and to not be afraid to check it out and learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially now, because back then, I know a lot of us, I was just like, I didn't have a coach. I didn't know what a career coach was. So I became my own coach and we didn't have those tools. And until now, I just learned about tarot. Like I started watching tarot readers on Instagram.
Mhm.
And I was like trying to figure out my life and logically. And then I looked into that. I was like, oh my God, this is a real thing. My own, I was collaborating. She actually read cards for me and she told me what each one was. And I was like, I didn't even know this was a real thing, but I was open to it. Right. And even now, like, it's just very fascinating about like Reiki healing and breath work. And then I'm using it as a tool right now. And it's changed my life, honestly. And I've become more of my best self and my best version and go into my energy. And it's changed my whole business perspective as well. And I'm much more in joy. I live more in joy in my personal life, my professional life. I've gotten more better friends. So if you're open to this, I know some people are like, oh my God, it's spiritual, woo woo, but it actually works. There are practical tools, like Jen said, that she helps with, right? So thank you so much for sharing your journey and your work, which is very important for women, especially because, we know that there are people out there who are still in the very logical, which is not, it's okay, but there's another side, right, to it that can give you more ease and less burnout and you can live happily, right? So amazing. And what feels most alive for you? And were any programs, initiatives emerging for you in the next season of your work?
Just writing. I have another book coming hopefully soon. I have two decks that I'm working on. I have an event or excuse me in Orlando that I'm doing in a couple of weeks. I'm excited about that. It's actually a book signing and a beginner tarot class. So I'm doing that in Orlando. So if you're in Orlando, come see me. It's Spellbound Books. And then I'm speaking at Mystic South in Atlanta. So that's in July. I'm really excited about that. And that's using tarot through grief and how to kind of find that joy again. And then in the fall, I'm going to be speaking at Books and Books down in Key West. It's actually Judy Bloom's store, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be doing a book signing and a little talk there as well, and whatever else pops up along the way. But I'm always around, so I'm always up to something. So if you follow me on Instagram, you can just see all of the things that I'm getting into.
Yeah, I've been following on Instagram. I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
podcast, this, the book signing. Wow. So congrats to you. You deserve all of this for what you're doing and so many more opportunities for you. I also do speaking, and I know it's been wonderful that you're actually being more visible, putting your out there, putting your voice in your book, because it's very important that more people know about this and use these tools, and you're making an impact, even if it's like one or two people, right? They're actually learning about this, and it's very important. Um, so I'm so glad. And Judy Bloom's like my favorite, so that's very exciting. So it's
Yeah,
amazing.
it's super cool. Yeah, it's a super cool thing, and I've been doing events for years and just speaking and all of that. So I love being able to connect to people and people have my work and all that. It's so cool to get to talk to them and sign their stuff and
Yeah,
just a lot of them will just share with me a lot of things that they've been going through. I would just did an event in May. And this gentleman came up to me after, and we were talking about, the moon, because that's what I do and, he said that, well, and with this one, it was really focusing on using moon work daily. And he said that he's going for his like graduate degree and he's doing all of these things. And he had said to his partner, like, you know what? I don't even think I have time for magic anymore. I don't have time to do 2-hour rituals and spell work. I just don't have time to do it. But he was like, after listening to you talk and about the practical part of a practice, you kind of reignited that for me. And I know I don't have to give it up because I can fit it in, even if it's 5 minutes a day.
yeah,
And that's the thing. There are things that you can do literally that takes 5 minutes. So that is something that's really important to me because I always tell people done is better than perfect. And
yeah,
I'd rather you do it, half ass than not do it at all.
yeah,
And I think
exactly.
it's really important. So for him to say that to me was really validating because that is something that I really try to get across.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how
Mhm.
you said progress over perfection because, and I tell this to every single lady, like, even if it's like 5 minutes of just sitting there and just being, that itself will help. And I do that, like just listening to music or like even a tarot moon thing. And I need to do that for myself as well, right? So a lot of us are still going through it. And I love how you got the message across because people at first, they're like, "Why should I do this?" Like, I don't know. But when it's actually a practical tool and you're open to it, you just try it for one day and you're like, "Do I feel like a relief?" Then you'll be like, it's an immediate impact. And then you're just like, "Oh my God, I wish I'd known this before." Right. So these practical tools actually help. And I do agree with that. So amazing. Awesome. Let's go into the fun rapid fire round. So, quick answers. A place in the world that feels magical to you.
My home.
Yeah, I love that answer. I mean, home sweet home, and that's what's even here. I'm always at home myself. So
Right.
cool. And let's see, mountains, forest, or ocean.
Say all of them, to be honest, because I have a house on the beach, I have a house in the mountains.
Oh, wow.
So I kind of am both. So I have to say all of the places, everything. I can find peace in anything, in anywhere, and I think that's something that everybody should strive for.
Yeah, I love that. No, I love how you said all of them. And I do agree. I'm more like a mountains, ocean, not too much of a forest, but yeah, I love how you said all of them and
Yeah.
finding peace anywhere, right? That's more. If you have the inner peace, I think that's good enough, right? So,
Yeah, right.
okay, awesome. And if you could instantly master any skill, what would it be?
Probably memorization. It sounds so silly and simple, but gosh, if I could remember things way better than I do now, that would be so helpful.
Yeah. I do agree with that. I mean, I was just talking to my family, and my mom's like, I'm like forgetting everything, and yeah, I mean, I actually just got an Amazon Echo to give me a reminder for everything. So I keep forgetting stuff. So
Yeah.
that I can definitely relate. So love that answer. Okay, awesome. So, Jen, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your story, and your perspective with us today. So, what I love about this conversation is that it reminds us that healing isn't about becoming someone else. It's really remembering who we've always been underneath the conditioning and expectations and stories we've carried. And there are tools to work with that and the shadow work, like Jen said. So, whether through intuition, shadow work, reflection, or simply creating a space to listen inward just for 5 minutes, the invitation is the same, right? To trust ourselves a little more and to become curious instead of judgmental, right? So, to anyone we're talking to, and to recognize that the answers we're searching for may already exist within us. right? And I do agree with all of this. And me and Jen, we've had the lived experiences here. And before we close, I want to share something exciting. So Sovereign Rise is launching soon, probably next week. And even before the official launch, we've already seen incredible interest, referrals, and aligned leaders reaching out to be part of what we're building. So as we're talking about collaboration, that's exactly we're building a sisterhood. Right. So it's a curated space for visionary leaders, creatives, and change makers to build authentic relationships, grow intentionally, and have these kind of connection talks, right? And without feeling that they have to perform. So it's a really true belonging with your soul, family, and true connection. So if you feel called to join as a founding member, memberships are currently free as we intentionally build this ecosystem together. And if you're interested in contributing as a collaborator, speaker, partner, feel free to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. And thank you for joining us on Voices of Impact, Jen. And
Thank you.
until next time, trust your inner wisdom, honor your journey, and remember that transformation always begins with